which wouldn't be attended by as many if it wasn't for His Excellency the President's vision of making Uzbekistan attractive to investors and changing quite a lot in a very short time the laws to attract investments. For us in the United Arab Emirates, we are known as to be one of the largest producer of hydrocarbon and a supplier to the world economy. But more than 15 years ago, we set a target to diversify our energy sources and also to help other countries in that diversification toward renewable energy. And we are very proud of our strategy, which will put 50% of our energy sources by the year 2050 coming from green sources of energy, combined with a reduction of CO2 of 70%. That initiative is driven by our leadership vision to ensure that we are moving gradually, like the rest of the world, toward greener forms of energy, with a high concern joining the world in Paris Agreement first and then in COP26, and we are going to next year to host COP28. So we are quite committed when it comes to net zero. We commit by the year 2050, like many of the countries in Europe. But at the same time, we feel we have a duty to work in this region and to work in Uzbekistan. And we've been given the trust and the opportunity by the leadership to put the first operational solar plant, like His Excellency mentioned, and we are committed to do much more in Uzbekistan and in the region and worldwide. As I mentioned, we have spread the renewable energy projects in over 40 countries, and we have lots more to offer.
Thank you very much for this perspective, and again for this perspective of the global footprint of the United Arab Emirates in the region and from a broader perspective. Thank you. Let's turn now, with your permission, to Mr. Limitovsky. From your perspective, any particular experiences, any trends you see emerging in your countries of operation that would be relevant for what we are discussing today, which is de facto the green energy transition of Uzbekistan? So if you look at what you do elsewhere, what would be the lessons of the ideas you think we should import here? Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. It's in fact very good and interesting questions. But let me first say a few words about the IB and the energy sector in Uzbekistan. In fact, it's really a great pleasure to join this discussion, and I commend the government of Uzbekistan for paying particular attention to the green energy and the questions of transition. And the achievements of this country in energy reforms are remarkable. And although the country is rich with primary energy resources, it has developed a very diversified, one of the most diversified mixes in Central Asia. And at the same time, government is fully committed to a green economy. We at IIB share this vision and aspiration of Uzbekistan, AIB prioritizes green energy investments across the world. It is our priority here in this country. Over 2/3 of our portfolio here, which I mentioned at the plenary session, 2/3 of that are related to the climate finance. We are at the IB also committed to reach 50% of climate finance by 2025. And we are committed to have a full Paris alignment by July 1st, 23. In the meantime, we also acknowledge the low carbon transition, how low carbon transition is important, and how it is serious for the country's energy system. Over-reliance on the renewables is not always possible. So with that said, some gas projects will play important role in facilitating the energy transition. And sometimes these projects are helping to integrate renewables into the grid. We at the bank have the focus, and our strategy is to finance projects that are compatible with the country's transition towards the sustainable and low carbon economy. I just wanted to once again mention the example which the last year example when we financed together with the EBRD and our dear client of Aqua Power of Sirdarya 1.5 gigawatt power station. This project applies the power station at a gas generation plant. It applies the best available technology to elevate the efficiency of gas power generation, and therefore leading to reduction of carbon dioxide. It is also financed in accordance with the PPP model, and it brings together the both public and private sector financing. Going forward and in the future, we would like to work with the government of Uzbekistan and the both public and private energy developers to explore the possibility in the four main priorities. First of all, enhancing the energy efficiency in industries, developing the renewable energy resources, financing electrification of the transport sector, and supporting the modernization of the gas infrastructure, but in line with Uzbekistan decarbonization trajectory. Speaking about the experiences which could be valuable for Uzbekistan, I would start with with one that is that sound power sector policies and transparent renewable energy regulations are required in parallel with the development of the specific projects. Government need to create the positive market incentives, and not to create a negative one to scale the renewables. Most of the countries in Asia requires a lot of investments in this transition, and it will not be possible to implement them on the back of the sovereign borrowing. So the fiscal space of many of our borrowers are not permitting to do that. So there is no other way but to attract the private sector investments. The other point which I wanted to make is related to the intermittent nature of renewables, which impose the additional requirements for power grids. Sometimes the governments are so preoccupied with the development of the power generation, the renewable power generation, and they forget that it's all about these tiny electrons going along the wires, and the wires is what you really need. And therefore, the bank around the globe financed this additional flexibility which is required, and this flexibility can be built through the storages, energy storages. We finance the storage capacity in India, in some of the countries of Southeast Asia. But what is also important is the development of interconnections to the neighboring grids of the neighboring countries. Central Asia used to have a very well interconnected power grids, and we at the AIB see that there's a lot of potential in actually investing into that, and to for the countries actually to add to security when that will be implemented. This is one of the projects, the dream projects, which we have. I can speak some more, but I think that that's enough for the beginning. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Limitovsky. Again, a very concrete, grounded feedback based on what you have seen in the region. Very interesting, your comments about, especially about the grids and the interconnection and the transmission. Absolutely. With your permission, we'll go to a sponsor, to a developer for a change, and we'll get back to the financiers, to the bankers, just not to impose too many bankers to the audience. So, and it's a banker speaking. So, Mr. Al-Ramahi, Chief Operating Officer of Masdar, please share a little bit with us your perspective. Masdar has been one of the leading global developers, and you have always focused on the future of energy, for the lack of better word. It would be very interesting to hear what are some of the innovations, developments you expect to see in the near future, and perhaps how Uzbekistan could benefit from this on various potential developments. Could be energy storage, a very fashionable topic. It could be hydrogen, another very fashionable topic, or other emerging technologies. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First, I would like to extend my thanks to the government of Uzbekistan for hosting us today, for inviting us to speak on the first investment forum. It's always great to be back here in Tashkent. This is a place we have been working in for the past years. We started our journey in Uzbekistan, believe it or not, in 2008. So we are not new to this country. We always saw the potential in Uzbekistan. We always believed in Uzbekistan. And that's why we decided early on to establish a presence and start development activities in Uzbekistan a long time ago. Now, it is also true that with the changes and the reforms that His Excellency the President and his government has done over the past years have transformed the investment grounds here in the country, which allowed us and others to really accelerate their development activities and capital flow. And I would like to also thank the financial institutions, even though we skipped you, but we respect you and we need you and we thank you for all of your support that you have extended to Masdar and to all of our colleagues in the development world, particularly in renewables. Now, before I answer your question, maybe I just give a flavor on who we are and what we are doing in Uzbekistan. It's also an honor to be sitting with my Minister of Energy, His Excellency Sail Mazrou'i. I think this is the first time me and you sit together on a panel, Your Excellency, so it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much also for your support. 16 years ago we were established. Today we are one of the lead renewable energy players globally. Gross capacity of 14, gross capacity by June, hopefully July of this year, will be 23 gigawatt with new shareholders coming in alongside our current shareholders Mubadala. Two numbers to remember when you think about Masdar in Uzbekistan. One, it is 1.5 giga, and two is 1.2 billion US dollars. That's our current position here in this country. And yes, everybody reference a plant called Nur Novoyi. Nur Novoyi is the first operational IPP solar, but IPP generally here in the country. And again, thanks to the Ministry of Energy for their forward thinking, for their support, for the government that sets the regulations and the policy, attract developers and investors to take that risk and put their money at work, supported by financial institutions, transparency and regulations. And we are happy to be here, and I urge those who did not come yet, please come. I think it's a great opportunity. It's a great country, great people, and hopefully you will have a successful investment. Technologies, solar, renewables, obviously our dear friends has highlighted it few times. I think that renewables are not base load, obviously. So thank you for highlighting that. I think it's very important. And therefore, it requires other form of energy to compensate or supplement renewable energy, or vice versa. So indeed, battery storage is very important. We were the first to develop a renewable energy project that operates 24/7 in south of Spain, in Ashbilia, a plant called Gema Solar. And today we see this technology. When we invested in this technology, it was not bankable. When we invested in offshore wind, it was not bankable. So bankability is very important. And battery will play a very important role. But like you mentioned, Julian, also green hydrogen. We cannot ignore green hydrogen. It's the new elephant in the room. We like it to be green. Some other people like it to be blue or gray. And some call it pink as well. Yeah? You like pink. I know that you like pink, yes. So we also like pink, indeed. We like blue as a country, but as Masdar, we will be investing and deploying and developing green hydrogen in the future. And I do hope that Uzbekistan will also give us the opportunity to work alongside the government and other partners. And I'm happy to see partners also sitting with me on the panel, so not only great lending institutions and government support. So thank you, Julian. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. I think you are taking this panel to the next level, introducing all sorts of shades of colors. Thank you. Thanks as well for the positive comments on the lenders. I'm sure Aida, Constantine, and myself are happy to hear that. So back to the bankers. Aida, question for you. EBRD has been a valuable, long-dated partner for the country and for the investors, as well as for many countries in the region, in Central Asia at large. Can you share some of the successes you have seen, you have been part of, and lessons learned supporting the development of green energy you have seen in other countries or in Uzbekistan? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Julian, and thank you very much to the organizers for inviting me to this distinguished panel. Well, the energy transition across the region and across of our country's operation is anchored in the climate commitments that the bank made, and that's basically having all our projects Paris Agreement aligned by end of this year, and having 50% of our financing being green, qualified as green, by 2025. And green, this is a very rigorous joint MDB methodology. So of course renewables is a major part of it, and of course renewables a major part of it. We're trying to make it a major part of it in the Central Asia region. We are trying to push the energy transition agenda throughout. It's actually, I was not planning on a PowerPoint presentation. There's just one slide. If you can click to one slide, it will just give you a visual idea of what I will be talking about. So the next slide, please, yeah. Thank you. So the idea in the region, the approach that the BRD is taking is, of course, around moving away from carbon-intensive sources of energy to decarbonize, to lower carbon. And this is where, this is an Uzbek example, but we're taking that approach in many other countries as well. It's from being the first bank financing first renewable projects in Kazakhstan in 2014, where since then we financed about half of the renewable capacity in the country. This is rehabilitating hydropower plants in Tajikistan. It's working with the Kyrgyz government on the reform. It's building first renewable projects in Mongolia. But really the remarkable transformation, of course, has been achieved here in this country. And it's been based on a sort of three-pronged approach where we as an institution, we put money on the table, we work very closely with our dear clients and co-financiers. We engage in an actual lending activity. This goes hand in hand with what we call policy engagement, where we work with the authorities on establishing the appropriate regulatory setup. But the third axis here, and the third dimension to this, is the actual GHG emission savings. And this is what we've been trying to achieve in Uzbekistan in particular. And this is, as I would like to repeat, is a country where the energy sector has seen remarkable transformation, from the unbundling of the Uzbek Energo, the monolith, to launching, very successful launch of renewable auctions, to basically establishing the transmission operator and looking at the grid issue. So this is all really, really, really remarkable. And where does it leave us? We were, by the way, we were proud financiers of the very first Nur Navai project with Masdar. We financed. We were in the first in the second financing with Total Iran. And as Konstantin mentioned, we financed CCGT last year. So again, this was all based on what we adopted as a low carbon pathway for the energy sector in Uzbekistan, which would encompass all types of themes, be it renewables, really aggressive scale up of renewables, high efficiency selective gas generation, decommissioning activities, strengthening of grids, but also some sort of new and future thinking on green hydrogen, on storage, on demand-side management, and things like that. So it's really, we were pleased to see and find a good, reliable partner in the Uzbek authorities who had the vision. And this is the lesson learned, I think, for the region. If there is a long-term vision that can indicate gigawatts of renewable investments coming down the road, this could attract the investors. This will attract investors. This will attract lenders as well. So it's clarity and longer-term view. That's what's required. And the low-carbon pathway that we adopted with the Ministry of Energy, with the Ministry of for Investment and Trade, is now in the implementation stage. Lots of different activities, again, as I mentioned before. The key there is that, of course, well, the core of it would be dramatic scale-up of renewables that's been in the process of developing, which would require, as previous speaker said, strengthening of the grid, and we are actively supportive there. But also, it might open this large-scale investment in renewables. It might open the opportunities that Mohammed, you mentioned on green hydrogen side, on battery storage. And this is somewhere which would encourage investors like yourselves to bring the fascinating stuff you're doing in the Gulf region to Uzbekistan, to the desert of Uzbekistan. Green hydrogen as a energy carrier of the future could address a lot of things. So we would be really delighted to see projects like that in this country. And to conclude, I think it requires a joint effort of multiple stakeholders. That's another big lesson, I think, or an example, I think, for the region. It requires lenders, it requires investors, it requires very receptive, responsive, and fast-moving government. And when all players are on the same page, a lot of remarkable things can happen, as we see in Uzbekistan. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Aida. Indeed, proud of the project you have financed. I think all bankers are proud of what they have financed. You get attached to these kind of small babies. We'll turn to Béatrice Buffon, Senior Executive Vice President of EDF. So Béatrice, EDF is very active globally, many markets, and also many technologies, be it hydro, be it wind, be it solar, but as well, and I think we have touched upon that a little bit in the panel already, also on high efficiency gas power plants. Can you share your, let's call it holistic views on the various technology, how they can be developed, how they can come together to deliver green, efficient, hopefully reliable system for the electric sector of Uzbekistan. Thank you.
Thank you, Julien. First of all, I would like to thank you for the invitation. It's always a pleasure to be in Tashkent, and it's always interesting to share views regarding the most pressing topics in the energy sector. First, I believe we all share the common goal of achieving net zero. And to this respect, Uzbekistan has marked its ambition towards carbon neutrality by becoming a party to the Paris Agreement. More and more countries are now looking in the same direction, carbon neutrality. Obviously, the main challenges on our path towards carbon neutrality are to put in place the proper regulations, to invest heavily, and to innovate. At EDF, Électricité de France, we aim at building a net zero energy future with electricity and innovative services. Urgent action is needed to move towards carbon neutrality by further electrifying our economies and decarbonizing our electricity production. I observe in that regard that Uzbekistan sets quite ambitious objectives, such as doubling the installed capacity and shifting the mix in favor of more renewables. At EDF, we are convinced, and we experience every day in the countries where we operate, that energy transition requires a global response, mixing all low-carbon generation technologies and efficient transmission and distribution networks. First, regarding the generation side, there is an urgent need, as it had been said, to step up investment in all forms of low-carbon generation, in particular in renewables, wind, solar, hydroelectricity. In that regard, Uzbekistan benefits from excellent conditions that I envy, I must say, in terms of sun and wind, to develop the expected 5 gigawatts of solar, the 3 gigawatts of wind, and probably much more. But alongside the development of variable renewable sources, there is indeed a need for dispatchable sources of production to ensure the baseload production, such as hydroelectricity, but also nuclear energy and CCGTs, combined cycle gas turbines. Developing high-efficiency CCGTs in Uzbekistan to replace existing aging plants, and that will be supplied with domestic gas, which is important here, will bring flexibility and stability to the system, and it shall facilitate the integration of a big share of renewables in the system. Low-carbon dispatchable sources include nuclear energy. As you know, EDF operates a large nuclear fleet in France and develops projects elsewhere, because we do believe that nuclear energy can contribute to carbon neutrality in various countries. We are also developing a small modular reactor, NEWARD, to be able to offer a smaller scale nuclear technology. I come to my second point. Alongside new generation capacities, the growth in variable renewable sources increases the need for grid resilience and grid stability and flexibility services. I believe in that regard that Uzbekistan offers a great potential to develop pumped storage facilities, a technology that can contribute significantly to add flexibility and security to the system without CO2 emissions. The reinforcement of transmission distribution networks is clearly part of the equation. In many countries, we see that a lot can be done to improve their efficiency. My last point regards innovation, which is crucial to decarbonize our economies. In all net zero scenarios, such as the ones produced by the International Energy Agency, a large share of the emissions reduction in 2050 come from technologies that today are at demonstration or prototype stage, and that are needed in particular to decarbonize heavy industry, long-distance transport, and thermal generation, with the use, for example, of green or blue or pink hydrogen, low-carbon fuels, and new technologies to capture CO2. These various and complementary technologies should be combined to deliver low-carbon energy in Uzbekistan. As a global actor, EDF is facing the same challenges in the various countries where we operate. We work hard to invent a new model to address the climate crisis, lower carbon, more efficient, less of an impact on the environment. Thanks to our international presence, we can witness the major challenges in our sector, and we provide concrete solutions in the various geographies where we are. EDF is just starting to invest in Uzbekistan. We are very recent compared to Mazda. We were awarded our first tender last year for Sidarya 2 CCGT. We decided to include Uzbekistan in our strategic countries, and we are fully committed to participating in the energy transition in the country. To conclude, I would like to say that I am very impressed by the leadership and the positive spirit of your president and of your government, whose decisions and actions allow us, international players, to invest in your countries. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mrs. Buffon. And our last, but not least, by very far, panelist, Anand, Chief Operating Officer of Synergy Consulting. So, Anand, you are extremely active. Synergy Consulting is extremely active in Uzbekistan. I will not quote on this stage the number of mandates you have, probably confidential information. You're also very active globally in many other markets. So just wanted to get your take from a broader perspective. You have been part of the energy transition journey in many countries, advising multiple customers. And this energy transition has seen a very strong momentum lately. So what has been your experience in that space from a global perspective? And can you share a little bit your crystal ball on how you see it evolving in Uzbekistan in the medium to long term? Thank you so much.
So Julian, thank you so much for having me on the panel. It's extremely exciting to hear the esteemed guests here. As you rightly said, we've had a very, very good experience in Uzbekistan. We got our first mandate in the country about 4 years ago. At that time, there were a lot of big plans about the entire infrastructure growth. Like everybody, we were skeptical. Today, when we look back, we're quite proud to say that Uzbekistan is our single largest market for my organization when we compare to very, very large regions, including Middle East, Central Asia, South Asia, and Africa. So it's that big for us today. We have a very large office here, and our strategy is to converge the Tashkent office into a regional hub. We are hiring local talent, we are training them here, and we're building a local knowledge center here for the regional. So we plan to hit about 30 to 35 people by end of next year. So we are that bullish around the country. We've had the opportunity of working with both government side and private sector side. We've worked with the renewable energy projects under the multilateral support. We've worked on the private sector side. We're doing both renewable and conventional. We're also engaged in the water, wastewater transport sector. So we can see the momentum, the traction, the speed at which things are moving. I think two things which I would like to put on the table is, see, today Uzbekistan is a star attraction for every global developer. And I'm quite proud to say that. As Synergy, we are one of the big promoters of the country. We've been pitching this to almost every other client we have. But where the country needs to go in the next 3 to 5 years is to build local capacity. Today, the entire infrastructure development is basis international developers. There has to be a growth of medium and large local companies which start building capacity in the entire infrastructure space, including renewable energy as well as conventional energy. So that's one sector where I think the country needs to move forward on. We're already focusing on energy transition. Obviously, there are a lot of talks about green hydrogen and green ammonia, or we can talk about the color of the hydrogen ammonia. I think the issue today lies is identifying the usage, and can we create a market parallel in terms of price range for usage of hydrogen and ammonia. And that's where I believe there could be two low-hanging fruits for the country. First is the country has 2 gigawatts of coal capacity. And to my surprise, part of the coal is actually imported. So there is a huge opportunity there to transform that into green ammonia plant. Yes, we can debate about the aging of the plant and the efficiency, but even if it's old, you still need them as peakers. So there is a huge opportunity to transform that. And things are being done. The multilaterals are doing a lot of work today in other countries to repurpose coal assets. So maybe this is a good starting point for repurposing a fairly high carbon intensive power generation asset in the country. So that's one. The second thing which I would like to leave on the table is, in the morning we spoke about digitization of the country. Digitization needs power. And to a large extent, it needs distributed power as well. The two major legs of consumption in the digitization world is the data centers and the mobile towers. These are two largest consumers of energy. And since a lot of work will be done in Uzbekistan from start, a lot of innovation can go into making these two legs of digital infrastructure more clean. All of us have spoken about fully renewable energy driven data centers. But there are also conversations around mobile towers running on renewable energy with battery storages. So these are two things which I would leave on the table in terms of low-hanging fruits for the country in terms of the green initiative. With that, thank you so much. And Julian, back to you.
Thanks a lot, Anand. So, now I've got the very difficult task of trying to summarize all what has been said. So that's mission impossible. I'm just going to share my quick impressions, and I will hand over to Mr. Minister for the final words on behalf of the government of Uzbekistan. So what stayed with me is the following. One, big thank. It's quite impressive to have such a panel. Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, you have been extremely focused. You have been extremely short. In a way, I do apologize for that. It's a bit frustrating to have short intervention from such a high-profile panel, but many thanks for sticking to our very compressed timeline. One. Two, what stayed with me is the level of energy I can hear from the various angles, financiers, developers, governments. I feel that there is a lot of business going on in this country and that it's good business. That's really a very candid sense I got, but it's so nice to feel that when you are in Tashkent. Three actually, creativity. Amazing the number of technologies we have been discussing. Not all of them are going to happen overnight. Not all of them may be deployed in Uzbekistan tomorrow, but take a step back. After a few years, Uzbekistan is not only embarking into a huge IPP program, but also thinking about all sorts of technologies, an amazing mix. You don't see that everywhere. That's extremely impressive. And last point, I felt also on this panel a strong sense of jointness, unity, alignment of interest, which is also fairly unusual between the various players, be it advisors, sponsors, financiers, governments. I felt that there is a joint vision which is shared with every player defending their legitimate interest, but working towards a very clear vision and delivering what has to be delivered for the country. That was my candid impression from this panel. I thank you for that, and I hand over to the First Deputy Minister. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. First of all, I do appreciate all speeches and kind words of our friends and partners here. Through your opinions, we managed to convince all people here that we are on the right track. It is high-speed highway towards our energetic future, that's for sure. According to international experts' opinions, zero carbon energy sector in Uzbekistan can be reached by 2050. And we are very keen about that. Hopefully we will reach all those goals. We are going through very complicated stages of energy sector transformation, we must admit that. But we do understand that we must modernize, first of all, our grids, our power generating plants, and we do have strong program and plans on how we implement that. We are already experienced in PPP projects thanks to our UAE friends, to Masdar, Mubadala. We will not stop here. We will, going deeper and deeper into privatization issues in terms of power generating, and we call it last mile. Of course, all the grids will be still, under national control in order to make sure that the transformation is always done in time and very on the high, level services. Today, we successfully launched our European investments on 1.4 giga power plants together with Siemens and EDF. And we are very much thankful to our partners. Coming back to hydrogen, again, we have established National Institute, Research Institute under the Ministry of Energy, within which we want to do our R&D center together with Saudi Arabian Aqua Power and United States-based air products. And as well as we are planning to do testing center with the top European companies within this research institute. And in conclusion, I would like to repeat words of His Excellency Mr. Al-Ramahi of Masdar. Please come to Uzbekistan. It is the best time and the most comfortable, conditions in our country these days. And the best and one of the comfortable facts about us that we are very flexible, we are rapid, and all our deadlines are yesterday. So we will be always as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency First Deputy Minister, Excellency Minister, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks again. It was a very interesting panel. Thank you for your time. I'm sure this audience is grateful as well. It was a great panel. Thank you so much.